In this section, I'm going to be exploring the concept of the scary cards and trying to help you feel a little bit more comfortable with reading the tarot and understanding some of the cards that might feel a little bit darker. People can often be turned off by the tarot because there is a lot of cards in there that do reflect quite intense energy and reflect very intense life lessons. And what I often say to my clients is it's important to know that through all darkness there must come light. So even if you get some cards that seem like they're on the negative side and that are going to talk about some negative periods that you're going to come up with and that's going to go through in your life, please don't be scared of this, because know that our biggest growth lessons come through these situations. And so what I'd like to do now is just help you feel a little bit more comfortable with reading some of these cards that might have a little bit more intense energy and a little bit more scary images on them. In this diagram, you can see we have some of the most intense cards in the tarot. So on the top left-hand side there, we have the Devil. And then we have the Three of Swords, which has the heart, which is being broken by three swords penetrating it. We have the Death card, traditionally a card that people are very scared of, but as we start to explore the major arcana, I'll explain why the Death card can actually be one of the most positive cards. We have the Moon, we have the Tower, we have the Ten of Swords, which features a man lying face down with all these swords planted in his back, and we have Grief, the Five of Cups, as that final one. So as you can see from these images, they're very intense. They look quite ugly and they look quite confronting, but they all contain powerful spiritual life lessons that once you've mastered can lead to the joy and happiness in all areas of your life. So please don't be afraid of these cards. So some examples of where these cards can lead to much bigger happiness for you is where grief and loss can actually become a new and better relationship. I'm sure we've all been in situations where we've left a partner or a partner's left us and we've been totally devastated, but in the long run we're able to look back and realise that wasn't the right person for us, and we meet someone better and realise we kind of had to go through that process. So the card of the Five of Cups, which is grief and loss, and any of these cards really, can represent that period, and there is light to be had in there. Another example could be the shock of losing a job that you didn't like. And, you might be horrified and scared and feel really fragile and worried about the uncertainty. However, obviously, along the line, you find something better that you absolutely love and you look back and go, I'm so glad I lost that job. That was the best possible thing that could have happened. So these are examples of how these cards that are traditionally seen as quite scary actually lead to profound transformation. Another really strong theme that goes through these cards that look a little bit confronting is that it brings up that there are old beliefs that no longer serve you and have created weak foundations. So it's really important to know that these cards serve as little kind of warnings to say, listen, this could happen, but that's why it's happening. It's happening because you've got these weak foundations, and if you can go in and work on yourself and embrace the spiritual lessons, then it's not going to be such a rough time for you. It's going to be easier. And in some cases, especially in the minor arcana, you might not even need to go through it at all. Now, if I have a client who I can see is really fragile, or they're depressed, or they've just had a really bad shock, start with oracle cards. So I teach another course called How to Be Psychic where I go into oracle cards, and I always recommend them because they feature angels and fairies and things that are a bit more lighter and a little bit more on the positive side. So if someone's feeling a bit raw, then you can start with that and perhaps go into a tarot reading when they're feeling a bit stronger. Or you can combine them. So there are people, Doreen Virtue, for example, has angel tarot cards, and what she's done with them is she's brought angel messages into each card. So that's really good for clients that are just a bit fragile and need something a bit more gentle. And I can always tell when I'm with someone after a healing session, like what's going to be the most effective for them. So tarot does contain these universal lessons, but there are times where people need a bit more of a gentle approach till they're ready to hear the information that the tarot has to offer. I always say to people, please wait at least 24 hours after a huge shock, preferably longer if you can wait up to a week, simply because often if someone's had a shock, like their partner's just left them, or someone they love has just died, or they've just lost their job, they're going to be in a state of such shaky vulnerability that their reading can be a little bit off kilter, and they might not even be ready to hear what you've got to say. So if, say, for example, you're saying, well, yes, you've lost your job and you are going to get another job, but it might not be for another 6 months, they might totally freak out. And that could be in their best interest. Like they might need to go and do a course to get a better job. But at that time, they just want to hear they're going to get another job tomorrow. So I say to people, look, give yourself a few days after a shock before coming for a reading. And if a client does contact you or a potential client and says, my God, my partner just left me yesterday, can I have a reading with you, now? Say, look, why don't you wait a day or two? Just let that shock settle, let the dust settle. So in terms of these cards that have the more intense life lessons involved in them, one thing I do at the end of every reading, if the last card is one of these cards, I always get the client to add another card. This is important because you want to leave the reading on a really uplifted note. You want to give your client and something to walk away from. And if you're reading for yourself, obviously, you want to know that there is going to be a new dawn, that things are going to get better. And once these lessons are learned, that's how it's going to proceed. So always add another card if the last card seems a bit negative. And if the client pulls another negative card, then that's when I take in and I say, right, I'm going to pull a card for you. So you pull a card and get a positive card until those lessons are learnt and people feel a bit more comfortable. And as I said, always offer that spiritual wisdom that goes with each card. So even though a card might seem a bit intense, you can offer what the spiritual guidance is going to be, which each card will represent. So just to recap, there's no such thing as the scary cards in the tarot. There are just cards that contain really intense lessons that are for your best and highest good. So if you have a client who is feeling a bit confronted by one of the images, or they say to you, oh, I don't want to read the tarot, it's all dark, you can say, look, there is actually a lot of light in the tarot. You've just got to find that way and learn those lessons and embrace them. And if they're really, really fragile, you could probably try oracle cards first, or something like Doreen Virtue's Angel Tarot, just take a bit more of a gentle approach.